We've spent the last few lessons building out the HTML for the main content area of our site, and it has been awesome. But here comes the hard truth. Semantic HTML does not necessarily translate to accessible HTML. If a sighted user can look at your page and easily spot the Get Builderius link, but a screen reader user is stuck navigating through generic text, then you've failed the universal by design mission. So now I'd like you to pop in the comments, have you ever tried navigating your page using only a keyboard or a screen reader? So that is using the tab key to tab through your page. How easy is it for users to be able to go to different links on your page? Let me know in the comments. Most websites follow a predictable pattern, unless maybe they are part of an experimental art design or some poorly structured website. We typically follow a similar structure. At the top, we typically have a header, then we have a navigation, then we have the main content area where we put in the meat of the current page, and at the bottom, we typically have a footer, which tends to hold our copyright, privacy policy, and other types of links. You can see that in so many different examples. I'll show you even the gov.uk website is similar. We have the header, we have a navigation, we have the main content area. Sometimes we optionally have a sidebar that shows related content. That sidebar doesn't necessarily have to be visually on the side. It could be underneath the main content area. And then at the bottom, we tend to have our copyright and some other useful links that relate to the website. You can check almost every website, even the websites that you are building should follow a similar pattern. Okay, so now let's try to understand the different regions and their purpose. One useful document you can use to learn about these page regions, the HTML tags that are required and what they do is the W3C. I'll leave a link to the actual page in the description. And there you can see the page regions. It tells you the different regions that we have on our page, like the header and what it's used for. Usually the header is at the top. That is the expected position. And it usually contains site-wide content that give you introductory information about the page. So like your site logo, it can contain a search, navigational links, and other things that are introductory to the current page. The tag we use is the header tag. We also have the footer. This is also site-wide content, but then it's mostly for legal parts of your page. So like your copyright, your accessibility statement, your privacy policy statement, and other navigational links, they tend to go in the footer. Then when we talk about navigation is trying to create some like jump-off points that you can use to jump from one page to another. Again, it is usually site-wide. That is for the main navigation of your page. You might have some other extra navigations like in-page navigation. You can have like breadcrumbs and other things. These are things that just help you to navigate. That uses the nav tag. The main content, that is the meat of your current page. This main content tends to change from page to page, while the other page regions, they tend to remain the same across pages, like your site header, your site footer, and aside as a sidebar and other things. They tend to be the same across multiple pages, but the main content tends to be different when you go from one page to another. It is designated with the main tag, and then we have other ones, so you can go through and read about them, understand them, and so on. Now, you might be thinking to yourself that if I use these tags, then everything is done. All is good with the world. While these tags help to create what we call the document object model, or the DOM, that's not enough for screen readers. Screen readers rely on a different model that is called the accessibility object model, or the accessibility tree. So what happens is that a browser will take your semantic HTML that is in the DOM and to now create a corresponding accessibility tree, which is now read by screen readers. Think of the accessibility tree as a simplified version of your site that translates the visual cues into 4 main data points. The first is the role. And what does the role mean? The role is simply what exactly is this element. So is it a button? Is it a link? Is it something that helps you to navigate? Is it something that helps me to know the heading? Is it something that helps me to know the header of a page and so on? So it is, what exactly is it? Then the next question is the name. And the name simply means, okay, now that I know what the element is, then what is the element's purpose? What exactly is the element trying to tell me? So is it trying to submit a button? Is it trying to take me to a home page? Is it trying to give me some information? What exactly is its purpose? So that is the name. Then for interactive elements, we now have some other things that we tend to use, which are the state. So the state now tells us, okay, what is the current state of the element? For example, with a button, has the button been clicked or not? So that now tells the screen reader user, is this button active or is this button not active? Because visually you can see maybe like a checkbox. You can see a checkbox that the checkbox is checked or not checked. But a screen reader user cannot see it, so they need you to tell them the visual cues into something that they can understand. So when you check an input, then it translates as checked in the state. If it is not checked, it will translate it under the state as not checked. And then finally, we have description. So still using an input as our example, sometimes you might have an input that we now have some further description to describe. Maybe we know that the input says you should fill in your email address, but you need some extra description. Okay, how should the email look like? What are the formats I should use for the email? So you can now add an extra description. We typically use something called the ARIA described by to represent that information. But yeah, those are the 4 things that tend to describe an element so that we have a full picture of what that element is and what the element is supposed to do and how we are interacting with the element. So now here's a quick question for you. If you saw a text, it has a blue color, it is underlined, wouldn't you automatically think this is a link? Because you saw it visually, you know that it is a link. However, how do you now translate that to a blind user? Because the blind user cannot see the color, cannot see the underline and other things. So how would you translate it to a screen reader? That's exactly what this accessibility tree is trying to handle. Presenting what we see visually to somebody who cannot rely on their eyesight. So here we have an example of a contact form. It will help us to understand the accessibility tree, that is the name, role, description, and value better. So I'm going to use the checkbox input. To check the accessibility tree, we need to open up the DevTools for our browser. So I'll right click and I'll choose inspect. That'll open up the DevTools and just make sure that you're on the input. So on the input, next thing you look for is the accessibility tab. If you don't see it right away, click on the double arrow, which is for the more options, and you'll see that among the list. So when you've activated the accessibility tree, we can now go under the computed properties. That will tell us exactly those information that we are seeing visually. Because visually, you can see it is a checkbox. It has a label that says, I have read and agree to the privacy policy. And then it has an extra description that says, you must accept the terms and so on. So how is it presented to a screen reader is with those 4 properties. You can see the name. I have read and agree to the privacy policy. We can see the description. That's some extra information that says, okay, you must accept the privacy policy. We see the role, that is a checkbox, and we see some other states and values. We see that it says it is a focusable element, so it is currently focused, and that it is currently not checked. The moment I check it, it now tells us the state that, hey, the state has changed. It is now checked. So you see, it presents all of this information to a screen reader user so the user can know exactly what is going on at any point in time. The same way we see it visually, that there's a check mark visually, is how it will now be presented to the screen reader using the accessibility tree by the state. So it tells them that the current state is that the checked state is true. So yeah, that's just a quick example showing you how an input is translated into the accessibility tree, which is broken down into the name, description, role, and value. Every element is broken down in this same way for the assistive technology to understand the element. Same thing with our page regions. When you hear the header, it is translated to what we call the banner role for assistive tech. When you hear main, it's translated to main. When you hear the footer, it is translated to content info. The sidebar is translated to the complementary landmark, and so on. So there's that relationship between the semantic HTML and the accessibility tree. So what we see with the HTML tag is actually translated into something else for the accessibility tree, and that something else can also be modified using what we call ARIA. So with ARIA, we can modify everything. So we can say, even though what we are seeing visually is a div, we can tell a screen reader that it is not actually a div. We just change the role using the ARIA attributes to something else. And the screen reader will now use that new thing we have chosen to present as the new role or the new name or the new state of the element. So that's why I say sometimes an element might be semantic, but might not be accessible, because we can change some of these accessibility properties from one element to another, especially when we want to give some extra context or extra details about the element. So now let's see how we can quickly add some structure to our website by adding the header and the footer tag. Let's jump back in. So here we are in the Builderius editor. To add the header and the footer, all we simply do is go to the element inserter and we search for our header. If we want to just add the header tag itself, we use the header under the layout options, but they've already created some handy components for us that already has pre-built headers. So we just go ahead and choose that global component site header. Let me collapse everything and make sure that the header is at the top. So now we have our site header at the top, which now has the logo and our navigation link. Same thing with the footer. I just click on the plus sign and search for footer. If you want the footer tag itself, you use the footer. That's if you are building it from scratch. But since we already have one built with our standard templates, I'm just going to insert the site footer. And now we've built our site header and our basic site footer. We can go ahead and edit it by right-clicking in the navigation tree, and we'll say Edit Component. We'll talk more about components in a future episode, but this is where we can now modify all of the things about the header. So we have the header, we have a skip to content link. We didn't mention it today, but sometimes to improve the accessibility of our pages, we tend to add a link that can help users to jump from the top of the page directly to the main content area. Because like I mentioned before, things like your header, your footer, your sidebar, they tend to repeat across pages. So we like to use a link that we put as the first element on the page that directs users from the header straight to the main content area to start reading the main content. Let me show you an example. So here's an example of the Neptune Observatory. You can see normally the header is always the same. So how can we now quickly skip the header and move to the other part of the page? So starting from the top of the page, I'll press the tab key and you can see skip to main content. When I press that, it skips all of the header links and then just takes me straight to the body links. So just a way to quickly navigate. Okay, go back to our page and you can basically look at the entire structure and convert it. The navigation that we use is gotten from our appearance settings directly from the WordPress dashboard. So we can go there by clicking on the Builderius menu and search for dashboard. Then we'll go over to appearance and then menus. and that is where the menu is created. So we can now go ahead and add new links. So for example, I can say I want to add a demo link and other links. So when I save it, we can now go back to our page. Let me go ahead and save and refresh. And you see the link is activated. So that's how you add all of your pages and everything directly from WordPress and it will reflect in the builder. Okay. So now that we have our basic layout, we have officially completed the HTML portion of our tutorial. In the next section, we'll now be looking at adding some styles to this HTML. We'll still be adding some content here and there as we go along, but we're now going to be focusing on the styling. If you've enjoyed the course so far, please do leave a thumbs up so that we know you enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments, have you learned anything? What is the one major thing you've learned from the tutorial so far? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next module.